From Los Angeles and Nashville, get ready to go behind the scenes with Entertainment Dudes. What happens when you pair a director, a voice actor in a world, and some of the most interesting people in entertainment? You're about to find out. Oh, hello.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Entertainment Dudes.
How dare you say that?
What was that for?
Tensions are a little high.
Tensions are a little high. I think everyone's a little bit testy. I've noticed this.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're feeling a little testy too. Maybe we should talk about this before it turns violent.
Yeah. Violence from airlines to award shows. Tensions are going up.
It's interesting how oftentimes when an individual is put through a challenging or tough situation, often those things, good and bad, are brought to the surface. And more often than not, those ugly things that are inside of us are easier to see, easier to record, and far more like a train wreck that are interesting to watch, or like, ooh, I can't believe that's happening. And but it also shows the character of what's eating at the heart of I'd say the West in general.
Right.
And it's impossible to, even this entertainment show, I mean, we want to focus on just the entertainment fun to it, but sometimes it's like it gets to a point where, especially in an industry like ours that is so demanding and requires so much emotion, time. Sure, the rewards can be great. If you're successful, you can have a fantastic career, but in order to make that happen and sustain it, the expectations on us on people are very, very high. Last week alone, I probably worked 15, 16-hour days for almost 7 days, 7, 8, 9 days straight. And that's, depending upon what's happening, multiply that by just life itself, with everything that happened with COVID coming off. And then even my wife's from Ukraine, so we've been dealing with all of that, trying to get her family safe, and at the same time working to get everything finished. And every time you turn on the news, anytime you look at something, there's something thrown in your face. It's like, it's painful and it's hard to watch, and it makes you sometimes think less of humanity, because you're like, are we all so terrible? And well, the answer is yes, we've always been, but generally we keep ourselves in check just by those little checks of self. Should I say this? I really want to punch that guy, but I probably shouldn't, because I don't want the consequences. And a lot of times when those filters are so raw, what you get is reactions without thinking, and their responses, but we're still responsible for our actions no matter what's happening. I think it's important, when those ugly parts of us rise up and you feel you want to lash out, we have to have what's a positive place that you can put those emotions? How do you deal with them?
Well, I think there's also been a lack of people being able to vent in healthy ways. So the pot is just going to explode at some point. So we've lost that, because for the past few years, we've been so just sequestered. And the other thing is, we always tend to look at a situation from our own eyes, but we don't know what's going on in that other person's life. And a lot of times they don't know what's going on in ours.
And sometimes it could be that one moment that you can snap. It takes is someone cuts you off in traffic. Someone, is taking too long at the checkout. I've seen all kinds of crazy, like, people getting mad for something you'd think was nothing. Like, why are they getting so upset about this? It's like such a small thing, but maybe that's just the camel's back, the straw that broke the camel's back. It's just that one piece that put the person over. And of course, we're delicately talking about an issue just with what happened in the Oscars. It's something that everyone had seen, and enough people have covered it that we don't need to go into. Everyone knows what happened. But what we are looking at is the fact that, like, you even have somebody who both of these people are professionals in the industry. They've had a long storied history of being, in the entertainment limelight, comedy. They've seen a lot of, how many times of comedians, you're in an audience with a comedian, you have an understanding there's a way that, something's probably going to get said which is sensitive to someone in the audience. But at the same time, you have the other side, where if there's a lot of pain in an area and there's a lot of stuff that's just under the surface, and it literally is being held together by a thread, and that thread is being cut by even something as simple as, as something like a joke, it pushes person to an extreme. Again, we said I think it's a responsibility thing, but obviously, if we're at that point where we're really lashing out and attacking people who we never would do that to in real life, that's an indicator that something's not right with inside of us. And I think we've all should congratulate ourselves in a way that we all went through the pandemic and we made it. Like we are on the other side of that, and the fact that we're still quasi functioning is, especially since we've never experienced anything like that, is it's worthy of saying well done. Congratulations.
True.
And now we need to think about what to do with those kinds of emotions. For me, I think there was a lot of like my wife had been gone for 8.5 months. She got stuck in Ukraine. Her flight was canceled. I was by myself for 8.5 months, and what do you do in that time? And I think a lot of it goes back to you are responsible for your actions. It really goes to that chance that you have an opportunity to make something good out of something that's bad. Always, it's always there. I ended up starting a company during COVID at the end of 2020. And, today, this last couple months, I just started really seeing the fruit of all of that stuff I built, that if I hadn't done something positive during that season, I wouldn't be enjoying the fruits of it today. So I think you always have a chance to plant, even when the soil's turned up like it is. That's a great time to plant the best seeds of your life, because sometimes when you're put in a situation like that, the ugly parts of you don't really show themselves that much. You don't get that deep until you're forced to look at that dark inner part of who we are. And I remember a while back, my wife had left, and I went through the dark night of the soul, essentially. And I think it was during that time that I thought, I'm already so broken. Why not work on those other pieces that are coming up while the dirt's tilled up? Because without the trauma, or without the challenge, without the hardship, that stuff never gets dug up. You don't even know it's there. You don't think to look at it. But when you finally get a chance to, why not start to work on the things that are there inside of us that are preventing us from moving forward?
And that's funny, because historically, a lot of great art, even comedians, a lot of time their comedy comes from a brokenness that they've experienced. A lot of the best art comes from brokenness. And now we're seeing reflection on that brokenness helps you be able to channel that energy. But a lot of times now we're just seeing immediate reaction. There could have been, with time to think about things, there could have been a lot better, I think, dialogue with what happened on the Oscars. Like, maybe Will Smith calls out Chris Rock later publicly about, what's correct and what's not correct to talk about. Maybe Chris Rock comes by and say it was off the cuff. I don't even know if he knew that she had a medical condition. So, we're not here to judge that, but there's always a better outcome, I think, that comes from conversation than an immediate overflow of violence.
Well, I think one thing that has been unfortunate and very interesting to see is having social media gives you access to all of humanity at one time.
Right.
We're getting stories that happen in India and Ukraine and Russia, and points of view from everyone around the world. And you see the ugliness from around the entire world simultaneously.
And it magnifies it. It makes it bigger than it is.
None of us were made to handle that much negativity. It's not, none of us are equipped to do it. So if every day, like Ukraine's the first war, I think, that you really were able to see, there's posts all the time. So if you scroll, you see shots of this building, this person, this suffering, this trauma, this suffering. And if you are even flipping through the screen, you literally are bombarding yourself with negativity. I think what they are is we're creating lightning rods. So instead of being able to have something necessarily diffuse it, those lightning rods are getting stuck into individuals or specific situations, and they're in a way they're being used to control our actions in a way that they are almost, it's like lightning immediately strikes it before it has a chance. It dissipates to everything around it. And what are those lightning rods, and who's planting them? Who's putting them there? Are they natural lightning rods? I've stopped looking at a lot of social media. I'm just like, I can't do it. So many people's different opinions are being spouted, and they really never even considered it. It's just a knee-jerk reaction.
Right.
Well, I often think, whenever we speak something into it almost like it comes alive. I think words have power. And when we say something negative, we are spewing that anger, that hatred, even if it's like, oh, phew, it's not off me. You put it out there. And I think eventually you're creating that. That I think it was like you could feel it when the pandemic just started. You went to the grocery store, and I think the first moment for me was when I got to the aisle and all the toilet paper is gone, all the cans are gone. I was like, I just felt this sense of dread. But it was nothing that I was personally feeling. It was just like in the air, you could feel it. And I think the same thing has been happening ever since that has gone on. There's so much negative energy that's put out there. And even something like the Oscars, which is they're trying, it's like this almost like creating a bubble of like,
Right.
look at this beautiful thing. We have this celebrating what we've created. Look at the art that we have. Look at these beautiful dresses. Look at blah, blah, blah. And even in there, the negativity that we experience cannot, even that bubble cannot keep out what's happening in the world outside. It's almost like
Mhm.
why are we even why have the Oscars right now in the form that it is when there's so much of that. I don't know. I just it's I think a lot of it has to do with disconnecting from the internet at large, Instagram at large, and start focusing on the things that we can control. What can you personally control, Cam? Like, what do you have
Yeah.
control over?
That's very interesting what you say, because a lot of people don't realize, even myself, everything you take it in personally, even if it has nothing to do with you. And people don't have the capacity to bear the weight of all the negativity going on right now. And it's gotten to the point where that negativity and the repercussions of that much negativity are flowing into the industry that's supposed to be an escape from that negativity. And what do you do when when you reach that critical mass? And I think you're right. Just uh taking account of yourself and just unplugging from things for a while. I found, especially during the pandemic, that there's things that I hadn't done in quite a while, like going and taking a walk, noticing the trees or the sound of nature, doing things like that, reconnecting with the world and the earth in ways that haven't been done for a while. And I find that takes some of the burden off, and it gives you the ability to think a little bit more about what is going on in the world. And it gives you the ability to think a little bit more about where you want to focus your energy. And it gives you a little bit of the ability to think a little bit more about what are the problems I can solve in my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think focusing on. It's a great time to focus on what matters.
Yeah.
The blessing of the whole entire process is that a lot of things that didn't matter were stripped away from me personally. And I
Right.
realized I've been putting so much energy into something that ultimately did not matter. And it was a really incredible time to be able to focus on something that does matter. That's my personal life, my spiritual life, my relationships, and even my connection just to why I'm doing what I'm doing. There's oftentimes, like a crazy cycle, that hamster where you're running on a wheel, and it's not until the wheel blows off that you realize you've been running on a wheel. Is
Right.
that the wheel I've wanted to run on? Have I just been running on this because of expectation? Have I been running on this because my family wanted me to run on it? Have I been running on because I'm trying to achieve some ultimate goal that maybe never actually even exists? It's just an
Right.
idea. And I think I mentioned this before when I talk to my students. I say, well, the dream is just supposed to get you to leave the safety and comfort of where you are to risk the journey to become someone or something. The idea of getting an Oscar is that the only motivation? You think, I wonder if Will right now is feeling like, hey, is all of the thing you've been working so hard for, is this everything? Can you retire now? Are you happy
Right.
and blissful for the rest of your life? And do you never need anything else? Or is it something that just leaves you wanting more? So, how much of what we've been pursuing is just leaving us wanting more? How much of it has left us empty, hollow? And what are you going to fill that with? You have an incredible opportunity to decide. I think there's an incredible concept in South Africa. If you read Desmond Tutu's book, No Future Without Forgiveness, he talks about the concept of Ubuntu.
Mhm.
Ubuntu, regardless of what you think of the philosophy of Tutu, the idea of Ubuntu, I think, is an incredible one. Is that what happens to you, to another person, the same thing happens to me. If
Happens
something
to you.
good happens to you, it happens to me. If something
Right.
bad happens to you, it also happens to me. So yeah, if you see somebody and you're throwing negativity on them, you literally are also putting that back on yourself.
Yes.
It's an opportunity to serve. I think it's an opportunity to love. It's an opportunity to reach outside of yourself and see somebody else in need and actually do something to help that person. Can I help somebody that's across the world? Yeah, I can donate. I can give money, but where can I personally start? I can start with the cashier, the clerk at the grocery store. I can say, hey, thank you so much for packaging my groceries. I appreciate you. I've had the situations where I've even told somebody in an airport in another country that I appreciated who they were and the fact that I was so grateful for them to serve me. And that she said, this girl was like, you mean I said, your life matters. And she's like, oh, you mean Western women matter? And I was like, no,
No.
you personally matter.
Yeah.
She started bawling. She fell down on the ground. She's weeping. She's like, no one has ever told me that before. Ha, all I said was a kind word. I spoke something to her that mattered. I think I noticed, I've been to about 40 something countries, and something I've noticed everywhere is that people are generally the same. We have different cultural ways of looking at things, different concepts that we have about what relationships look like. But at the heart of it, we all want to find something that makes us happy. We enjoy our family, we enjoy creative expression, and we want something in our lives to matter. So knowing right now that all around you, even that angry person who's shouting about something, inside they have a core part of them that says, I want to matter. I want my life to matter. And when they're screaming like that and they're angry, they're saying out loud, my
Right.
life doesn't matter. I do not feel my life matters. It doesn't excuse the behavior, but at the same time, there's an element of humanity to it that we can connect with, because all of us are human. And it's an incredible opportunity to reach outside of ourselves and say something kind, even when you don't feel like saying something kind. Encouraging someone who looks like they could use encouragement. I guarantee right now, every single person you see can use encouragement. I guarantee it. 100% of the people you see can use encouragement right now. So go out of your way, find something about them that you think's interesting. Compliment something that they're doing. I always do it when I see people changing the trash. If I see somebody taking the trash out at an airport, at a restaurant, I always just say, "Thanks for doing such a great job. Everything looks amazing." And it wouldn't look as good if you didn't do that. Thank you. Sometimes they'll start crying, and other times they're like, "Oh my gosh, thank you," because they want that to matter. So I think the first thing to do would just be to look to your fellow man and woman as just that. We are brothers and sisters in this story together. Our story is being woven together. When history looks back on us, this is the season they're going to see. They're not going to see you, person, sitting there. They're going to see us collectively. And are we people that rose above the circumstance and we overcame? And look what had happened to them, and yet they rose together to overcome? Or are they going to be one of those dark moments in history where it looks back and says there's a black hole on human history, and unfortunately, this is the season they lived in? I know there's enough people right now alive that are good people. I see them everywhere. I know that their hearts are good and they're genuine and kind. And I think ultimately we will rise above this. I'm confident of this. But I think it's going to start with focusing on how can we serve each other, and what can we do to look outside of ourselves and to disseminate, like you already said, the anger. Find something somewhere positive, put it. Where's that for you, Cam? What have you noticed that's worked for you if you're feeling like, gosh?
It's interesting because I previously had a career in news, and I lived day to day heading toward the things people
Ran from. Yeah.
and experiencing things that nobody would ever want to experience. And it's very interesting that after I left news, I basically shut off news. I don't watch much news anymore. But what I tried to do is when I was in that situation, and if you watch a lot of news and things around the world, was take some advice from Mr. Rogers, who's just a great human being, and created an influence on generations of young children and of course later adults. And Mr. Rogers said, whenever you're seeing something bad going on or a bad situation in the news, look for the helpers. Focus your shift to the helpers. There's a burning building, but look at those people that are running into that burning building to save somebody. And I think when you see and you focus your attention, even though the news may be focused on this point, look in the background for the whole story, the things that are going on, and you realize that humanity as a whole isn't so bad. And you realize that the helpers are there, and then you think, what can I do myself in my sphere of influence to be a helper? What can I do? And things like you were saying about just giving compliments to people, looking at the bright side of things, not knowing what's going on in somebody else's life. If you can help change your sphere of influence, imagine if everybody did that. There would be a huge force counteracting all of this negativity that we are experiencing right now.
Yeah, it's wild how you said that. I like that look at the helpers.
Yeah.
My parents are in an Eastern European country right now, and they're working to help refugees coming across into their country from Ukraine, and they've seen
Right.
about 300,000 come through there. And the other day they got a call and they said we have 256 orphans. Their orphanage was bombed. We need to be able to try to find a place for them. And again, it's like it's devastating. Like, how do you even deal with this? But at the same time, they found out there's a camp in the northern part of the country that said normally we have a summer camp. We're going to open it up for all these kids, and we're going to run a camp for them. So they already open up the kitchens, they're opening up the camp, and now they're transporting
Right.
all these kids up there, and they're literally doing a trauma camp for them to be able to help them overcome. So you have people that are going through that are just transitioning from one place to another. You have people that need a place to stay. Some can't afford to go to another country, so they're helping find homes for them. And my wife has been working very much in trying to help rescue a lot of the people coming across into Poland. They've been doing a lot of the stuff working with, she's trying to help the zoo animals. The zookeepers were shot, and it's like, it's
Right.
terrible, but what can be done? They're rescuing the animals. They're helping to get the people who are there working with the animals safely out of the area. And so even in the midst of all this trauma and suffering, there's a tremendous amount of people who are volunteering to help, who are offering tremendous sums of money, encouragement. And that's just one story. So wherever you are and whatever you're going through, each of us has each of us has a day. If you've woken up, I think that's a blessing and a gift. You're awake today, and there's a reason why you're here. It's not an accident. And you have an opportunity to literally make a difference in the lives of the people around you. Maybe it's your team that you're leading at work. Maybe it's your company. Maybe it's your division. Maybe it's just your own family and yourself. You have an opportunity to speak life into the people that you live with. I'm not speaking, yes, there's people that are in traumatic situations and horrible homes and very abusive things. And this seems like it's a lot easier to say than do in situations. I'm not being ignorant of the fact, but at the same time, even those people who I've seen, even those people are the worst abused. One of my friends, Bethany Haley, works with boy soldiers in Africa and Congo and stuff, who've literally, hurt, they've done horrific things.
Yes.
And you think there's no help for them, but they're able to work with those people to help overcome. And a lot of it begins with that personal responsibility, accepting the trauma that's been happening to you is it happened. It's not your fault. And then what you can do with that and healing. And every person, it all starts with the choice. It all starts with the first choice, whether it's to you to recognize like this, I cannot change what happened to me, but I can change what I'm going to do next. And I think that happened with Ariana one time. I taught her an equation. I said that was playing with this little kid, and he ran around the corner, and the grandma had said, if you're going to play with the hose, whatever you do, don't spray this baby. Well, the baby comes right around the corner. Ariana blasts him right in the face. The kid falls over. She comes screaming in the house, throws herself on the bed. I can't play with them anymore. It's not fair. It's not fair. It's terrible. I didn't mean to. It's not fair. And I said, now's not a great opportunity to teach you an equation I think will help you for the rest of your life. I said, can you change what happened to you? No. Whether it's fair or not, did it happen? Yes, it's already happened. I can't change it. Okay. Well, what do you want to happen? I want to be able to play with these kids again. And I said, so the equation is this: what happened to you plus what action you can take will equal the outcome that you want. So what outcome do we want now? We want the ability to be able to have a healthy family, to be able to have be able to maybe have our freedoms back in terms of the ability to speak, so we're not being canceled. And a lot of the stuff that's happening, maybe it's just something I want to be closer to my wife or my spouse, or maybe I want to find a new job that brings satisfaction. I don't feel like a slave. Well, for her, it was, she said, I said, what do you think you can do? She said, maybe I can say I'm sorry. I said, okay, blast the baby in the face with water plus I'm sorry. Will that equal play with the kids? And she said, no, I don't think it's enough. And I said, well, what do you think you could do? And she said, well, I think I can get her a flower. And I said, okay, blast the baby in the face plus I'm sorry plus cute little girl gets flower to grandma. That may work. So I made it. She got money out of her own bank account. We went to the store. She bought the flower. I was on my way up there with her, and she said, no, Dad, you stay here. I'm going to go do this. I need to do this myself. And she went up and apologized. 30 seconds later, she came back, smile on her face, cheering, said, you know what? I said, what'd she say? She said, oh, that's the sweetest thing ever. Yes, of course you can play with my kids. So I said, maybe it didn't work. But what you've done is you've taken blast the baby in the face, plus I'm sorry, plus your own flower, plus your own apology personally, plus, okay, that didn't work. Maybe something else. And ultimately you keep deciding, is that the goal that you still want? So I think it's a tremendous opportunity to start taking some of those steps. What happened to you? I lost my family during COVID. My country was attacked. So and so said this about me, or whatever it is. I think the first step is in recognizing that happened to you. You can't change it. It's done. It's in the past. You cannot change what happened. Now, whatever energy you have, I want to see you guys take that same energy that you're looking towards the past with and turn it around and push it towards the future. What can you do next? There's an opportunity to take that plus what you can do to achieve what's next. We want healing. We want to be able to go out on the street and have a conversation with people without people getting enraged on the plane or driving crazy in the thing or robbing someone or mugging people or just, I think that starts with what we've already said, beginning ourselves to start making changes in ourselves and speaking wholeness into the world instead of passing on that anger to them.
You hear all the time, we're just a product of our environment. We're just a product of our environment. And that's the way I look at it. Yes, where you are right now, you can be a product of your environment, but that's also a victimized way of thinking because your environment is also shaped by you. You have the ability moving forward to shape your environment. And so counteracting those things, like you said, that equation, that's brilliant. I can equate this with my neighborhood several years ago was hit by a tornado. My house was destroyed. I was working in news at the time, came here to my house, quickly ran in and shored up everything I could. And then I went out with a camera to start shooting everything. Some neighbors on the other side of the neighborhood didn't know I was a neighbor, came up to me and just started yelling at me for taking advantage of the situation. How can you be shooting this right now? Can't you see we're in pain? All of this. And I said to them, I'm in pain too. See that house right over there without the roof? That is my house. The only way that we're going to turn things around here is if I shoot this, get this on the news, and people are going to see it and start offering help. So it's a matter of thinking outside your lenses a lot of times. And me just saying that changed their entire countenance. I interviewed them, and days after, when everybody's trying to recover from the tornado, which was like devastation, it's like, how can we recover from this? Everybody just kind of came together and helped each other out. And we took something that happened to our environment, joined together and changed our environment and built everything back and changed things that we didn't like about our neighborhood. I have a better house now than I had before the tornado. So many times, be it a tornado, a pandemic, a war, coming out the other side, there is an opportunity to raise up your situation and change your situation. So instead of having a defeatist attitude a lot of times, or an immediate reaction, I would equate the reaction of those people to me almost as the reaction of Will Smith to Chris Rock at the Oscars. It was an immediate reaction. But once you take time and each side gets to tell their story, a lot of times there's a dialogue where each person understands the other person's lens. And when we gain that, we can change society for the better. I have no doubt in the conversations that are coming up now between Chris Rock and Will Smith, that there will now be civil conversation, and each of them will understand where they went wrong, what they did wrong, and there is going to be growth on both sides that comes out of it. Maybe Chris Rock will think about his comedy, and a lot of times maybe an off-the-cuff remark that he makes there can be something more serious. Maybe Will Smith will think, well, look at all this dialogue. things are going better now than just my immediate reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if we just take our time to stop, try to understand the lens of the other person's life, and then don't avoid a situation, but deal with it head on through conversation, we can make the world better rather than immediately making the world worse by inciting violence or doing something violent. That energy can be spent making the world better.
Yeah, I think you're right, because the action itself was a negative reaction and it left
Yes.
us reeling. I remember I was like, I can't, did that,
Right.
the question, was that real?
Right.
Like,
And it
or
was
is that
kind of
just,
a defensive reaction, but
yeah,
it's
knee jerk
still, there's other ways to
reaction.
defend.
Right. And then all of a sudden, immediately afterward, I saw tons of negativity on, oh, Will's this, or, Chris should have
Mhm.
said, all these opinions there was
Yeah.
very little that were like focusing on the healing, focusing on the hurt, focusing on the
Exactly.
positive. And the reaction is immediately to accuse, point fingers. I mean, what was the original sin, guys? I guess in the Garden of Eden was like, he made me do it.
Right.
Like, why did you eat the apple? Oh, the woman made me do it. And the woman's like, the serpent made me do it. It was
Mhm.
immediately pointing fingers at something else and refusing to accept responsibility. And why was that the original sin? I think it's, that's the first reaction is the only reaction that you ultimately have control over, how you respond to a situation.
Yeah.
And the minute you surrender to that carnal, angry nature, you're literally aligning yourself with something that's destructive, and you're turning that destruction back onto other people, which is ultimately going to come back to you. You're sowing seeds. I love that
Mhm.
idea of like, you're sowing seeds. You're either sowing something for good that brings life, or you're sowing death always. Every word that you say, every thought that you have, every action you take to someone else, every action that someone else takes. It's amazing. Like, oh, that's their responsibility. They're grown men. They can do whatever. It still impacted me.
Mhm.
So what we do impacts other people. And are we sowing seeds of life? Are we sowing seeds of death? And in the last month, it's a great time to reflect back on your life in the last couple of years, and ask, have I been sowing seeds of death? What is the result of the things that I have done in my life? My wife's gone. This has happened. I lost my job. I lost this. I'm drinking a lot more. Sounds like that might be seeds of death. You're
Right.
sowing something from a place of hurt. It's okay. It makes sense if you're hurt. Of course, we all are. You might be angry. You should be angry. There's a reason to be angry. Injustice has been done, and you want to see justice done. But are you going to start sowing seeds of anger and animosity into those things around you, your people around your house, or are you going to begin to show something good? Like, I think just even in terms of forgiveness is one of the first things. Oh, they don't deserve to be forgiven. I don't think you do forgiveness necessarily for the other person. It's for you first and
For you.
foremost. Because, right, if you cannot forgive, then you are literally a prison still. You're still a prisoner to that very injustice that's been done to you. So maybe that's the first thing you can do. I really need to forgive someone who said this to me during this time. My friend who accused me online of this one thing, and I refused to talk to him. Maybe that's a great time for yourself to find forgiveness personally. And sometimes those seeds can lead to something even greater down the road. Maybe you never have that friendship again, but what you've created is you've created goodwill that you've sown into the world that is leading to a wholeness for yourself. And maybe another better relationship comes because now you are in a better place to receive an even better relationship. It's an incredible time to grow. It's an incredible time to plant seeds of goodness in your life that will reap a harvest 10, 20, 30, 40 times what you've experienced in negativity. You can grow something incredible out of it. If you'll choose today to take that, the high road, take the high road and begin to make choices for yourself personally. And don't worry about what other people are doing right now, because you can't control it. You cannot control what other people are doing. You have zero control. You can control what you do, and you can control having good boundaries, and you can control planting seeds that will lead to life and instead of death. And if we can encourage one another to do that, because one seed of life that you plant in my life, Cam, that can grow. And maybe that helps me overcome something in my life. And then I speak to my daughter or my wife better, or I speak to my work, or I do something positive. It's sowing that same thing, that whole pay it forward thing that they did for, in the 90s and early 2000s. It works. It's
Right.
real. It really has an impact. Now's a good time to pay it forward, maybe not monetarily, but to pay those positive, good seeds that you're sowing in your own life. Let them bear fruit and kill those nasty seeds that are leaving you where you are, just discouraged and depressed and angry. And you know, I'd say run away from that as far as you can. You got to deal with it, And
Right.
I think if you're angry, and you can't find a way to deal with it because you're so angry, there are channels. There's people out there you can talk to. I worked with some suicide hotlines before, and I worked with people who called in and they're at the end of their rope. They're ready to
Right.
kill themselves. And there's still hope for you if you are that discouraged. It's help. It's okay to get help, and it's time to get help. There's no reason you need to try to, oh, I could do this alone. I'm a person. I can take care of this myself. We're a community. As we've seen, it impacts everyone. Will Smith's smack, as the smack heard around the world.
Yeah.
We all felt it. I mean, I felt that when he did it, like on my face, it like stung. So it's the same thing. You are part of a community. We're all part of a community, and you can get help, and it's okay. For those of you who are not at the edge of your rope, I think it's like, okay, what is something positive? I want to look better. I feel out of shape. I feel sick. Well, can you change your eating right now? Can you go to the gym? Can you go punch a punching bag? Just get some of that out. That's positive direction for your anger, and it's leading you towards a goal. I do that. I go to the gym and I punch stuff, or I run, I hit the treadmill, I play basketball, and it's all leading towards a goal of me wanting to be in better shape and in better health. So I'd say pick a goal for you right now in the season. What's something that you can do if you know you're angry? You know what's going to happen. It's not a surprise. Will Smith's angry right now. It's obvious. This is an opportunity. If you got that anger, you know what's going to come. It's not a surprise. Next time he's angry, where'd that come from? I can't believe I did that. Yes, you can, because you're furious.
Right.
So it's a good time to find out, where can I direct this anger? So when I know it's going to come, I've got a positive place for it. And it's a great opportunity to heal, like you already said. It's a chance for them to set an example, and maybe from what happened, they end up developing a deeper relationship, and it actually ends up impacting us for the better. I don't know. We'll see.
Yep, that is a great point, and how you brought up that forgiveness, because maybe somebody offended you and they don't even know they did. Maybe they do know they did, but what is for sure is that you're there harboring that resentment, and it's eating you up inside, and the other person's going on about their life.
Yeah.
That resentment,
And without even knowing.
no,
And
that
maybe them not even knowing makes you feel even more angry, because you're like, how come they didn't know that?
Exactly. And what you can do is change that, and forgiveness, however counterintuitive it might seem to you at the time, that is something that opens the tap on that anger and frees you, where you can start changing your environment, and you be the change to your environment. And I think that's a great place to start for all of us.
Yeah.
Healing, thinking back on, like, do I harbor any resentment or anger? Do I let that anger and resentment grow, or do I turn on the tap of forgiveness and see what happens from this point on? Will your life be better? Will you experience better things? Because really, in the end of it all, it's just hurting you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an incredible chance to heal. Maybe even something to go through that exercise is just to take a moment, stop, put down your phone, after the show, of course.
Yeah.
Put down your phone and think about those things that someone has hurt you, or something, a situation that has hurt you over the last, since 2020. I lost my job because of the policies that the government made. I lost somebody in the hospital. Someone said something that hurt me. The brokenness that we have, and say, just at that moment, say, I forgive you. And I've learned this about forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't like, I forgive you and suddenly you feel better and everything's okay. It doesn't work this way. I had to start through one of my circumstances. I had to start forgiving myself. I didn't really realize that I had blamed myself for so much as that had happened. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I just say, I love you and I forgive you. And it started with me there. It was an amazing stone that just fell out of the way. And it took practice. It took me about literally 6 months to a year of actually saying that, whenever I was starting to feel that condemnation of myself.
Right.
Stop. I love you and I forgive you. You, I forgive. You, I love. And you deserve to be, in this case, to be forgiven. And I think it was just that was an incredible step for me. And maybe that's where you are right now. Maybe you're at that point. I need to forgive myself for things that I said during this time, for something I did.
Yeah.
Guilt is an okay thing, but I think there's guilt that leads us to repentance and conviction. A A spirit of conviction is a good one because it leads you to a point where you say, what I'm doing is painful and hurtful, and I need to turn away from that and go in the opposite direction. What is repentance? Repentance is that turning away from something that is destructive and running towards something that is good.
Which is different than an accusing spirit, which
Right.
can seem exactly the same.
And they're different because one leads
they
you
are.
to death. It's like, you're terrible, you're worthless,
Right.
you don't deserve love, you don't deserve this. I can't believe you always fail all the time. You do nothing but fail. That kind of thing, that's a condemnation that is not leading towards health and wholeness. That leads you to despair. And if you find yourself in the cycle where you are refusing to forgive yourself, where you feel worthless and you feel unvaluable, that is a lie. It is not true. The very fact that you exist today is a miracle, and there's a reason why you're here. There's a purpose. And so if that condemnation spirit keeps pushing you in that direction, you can know immediately it's a lie. And it started for me by saying, I love you and I forgive you. Once I started doing that, then I was able to extend that beyond to the people who had hurt me. And I can say, I love you and I forgive you. Love is different than like, oh, I love you. It's I recognize our involvement as humanity. And your value. And I love the fact that you are here. I love that you are a person. You exist. We are part of the same family. I'm hurt by you. I don't think I'll ever be friends with you again. As a matter of fact, I know I won't, but I love you and I forgive you. It has power. It breaks strongholds. It breaks those areas just that grips on your heart where you feel like you can't even breathe. Your chest is so tight and you have a cycle where you just you just feel so dark. It's a chance to find light, and those steps work. I've seen them work in my life. I've seen them work in lives of the people I've helped with around the world. We've seen those in those boy soldiers in Africa. We've seen them in Sudan from the lost boys who were, whose families were slaughtered and they had to flee the country. They were getting shot when they swam across the river. They got eaten by hippos. The ones that I survived, it works for them. They were able to forgive. And those who could find forgiveness, they didn't sing Kumbaya with the people who hurt them, but they did let it go, and they were able to heal from it. And they were able to recover and through some incredible trauma. So I think if you're listening to the show and whatever you're going through right now, you're feeling those things, just know the first step is knowing that you matter, knowing your life has value, knowing that you have purpose, knowing that you deserve to be, you can be forgiven, you can forgive yourself and you can forgive others, and you can be free from the cycle, this crazy cycle that we get stuck in when we condemn ourselves. So I'd say now is a fantastic time to start working on us. It is a good season to do it. It is a great season to do it.
As we see right now, I mean, there's a beautiful cherry tree right outside my window right now, and it looked barren and desolate all winter, and it's just sprung to life. It took the winter time to heal, and now it's coming back to life, and we can all come back to life with that advice, Jason. Like amazing stuff. And so amazing things can be ahead, no matter how desolate, how dark things in our past have been. That does not define your future.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't.
Nope.
And we all have an awesome opportunity to do something spectacular. I think as crazy as everything is, we have an opportunity. I really think our best days are ahead. Yep. They might say, oh, you're crazy, you're living in rainbows. I believe that much in the human spirit. I believe in that much. I've seen and know enough of history. I've seen enough of it with my own eyeballs to know that even the worst things that we've ever done or have ever happened to us, that there is a way to rise above. And I just think that's a testimony to, testimony to creation and to the way that it was all made and to what God breathed into it. It's remarkable. And that freedom is there for all of us. And I choose it. And I'm not perfect at it.
Too.
I'm not perfect.
And no,
I work
it's not easy all the time. I'm not saying it's easy.
No, hard. It's almost impossible. Alone, It is impossible. By yourself, it is impossible. But
the road ahead doesn't have to be filled with sadness and violence. And we can all change our world by not being a victim of it, but by dictating what we can change.
That's right. Well, there's
Yep.
another episode, an exciting, I know, a
Yeah.
little bit more serious episode of Entertainment Dudes. And for those of you who are just joining us, the rest of our podcast, we cover a lot of everything with entertainment. We cover directing, we cover music, we cover voiceover, we cover the next coming shows coming up are going to be some pretty exciting looks into some LED studio spaces. We've
Yep,
got some
technology,
with some
yep.
writers, we got some new directors coming up, and some producers, and how technology is evolving and the way that's impacting the entertainment industry and then storytelling in and of itself. Some of those tools better? Are they going to make us crutches that we're leaning on? And, how are we going to incorporate those into our new ability to tell our stories visually, audio, and everything? So thanks for joining us on another episode of Entertainment Dudes. I'm your host, Jason Crossman.
I'm Cam Cornelius, the voiceover dude. And remember, entertainment is really nothing without the people that make it happen.
Entertainment Dudes.